Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land, and welcome to DC Fans United. So, today I'm going to be reviewing my first Alterna comic. If you saw my video, well, I guess it'd be my last video, I did an unboxing where I received 9 Alterna comics on Christmas Eve. So, I had an Alterna Christmas. So, Tinseltown number 1. This is actually a really interesting story, and it's funny because I just read issue 2, and I kind of want to talk about issue 2 more. Issue 1 sets everything up. It introduces the main character, Abigail, but there's some crazy stuff that happens in issue 2. It's pretty good. So, anyways, as you can see, and I actually didn't notice this right away. Obviously, she's there in her cop uniform, but there's also a camera, old school with the big reels. So that plays a big part of this. So this is a really stylish cover. It's actually one of the things that drew me to this comic. Like, that would make a pretty good poster. But anyway, you get Tinseltown and the big camera in the background. So right away you understand the setting. And then it says, too, she was a cop in the early days of Hollywood, a town where nothing was what it seemed. So, right away on the first page, another thing, too, is look how nice this looks. Usually when I review a comic with my camera phone, you'd get more of a glare like this. The cover has a little gloss, but normally in a modern comic, all of the pages would be really glossy like that, even more so than that. But look how nice this looks. So I think there are advantages as well as some disadvantages to newsprint, which we'll get into here in a bit, but I think it looks really nice for filming and just for reading. Like, for my eyes, I thought it worked really well. So, in any case, her name is Abigail Moore, and the really interesting thing about this, the writer, David Lucarelli, his mother was a police officer. So that was really his inspiration for writing this. So you could kind of tell there was passion behind this. Like, the writer, really the creator of the story, had a lot of feeling for it. In fact, Abigail's badge number is the same as his mother's badge number. So in any case, it's 1915 when the main part of the story starts. Also, I should say the artist, Henry Ponciano, this guy, he did the work of like 3 people because he's credited with the art. So he did the penciling, the inks, and the colors. That's a hard-working guy. And then this person, H.D.E., is the one who did the lettering. Alright, so it introduces who she is on the first page. I found that to be really helpful, and kind of a little explanation of why he created the story. And then it does a real quick biography of who she is. So she's born, you see her as a baby, and her dad and mom are there. Her dad is a police officer. He's a cop. So that, in fact, it says in 1904, he became one of the 2 officers to work for the city of Hollywood. So, pretty cool right away. Some of her first memories are of him and, of his police badge and of his face and coming home from work and stuff. So, pretty interesting. But it says the last time and there will be spoilers, actually, just so you know. I'm not going to show everything in this because I do recommend it. I think it's definitely worth. They only ask $1.50, all right. So I think these are definitely worth buying. I keep like zigzagging. I'm kind of excited. This is a good book. But another thing about it is it's a 1 of 5. So it's really like doable to collect this whole story. I have only got the first 3. I think the 4th one's out now. But anyways, spoilers, her dad leaves and he doesn't come home. So he's a police officer. He got into a shootout with some, I think, what do they call them, bandits? Unknown assailants. His partner is shot in the arm, but he's shot in the head. So at 15, her father dies. And that's when her life kind of takes a turn for the worse. It doesn't get, like, terrible, but basically it changes. This is kind of when she has to become an adult, unfortunately. So she's 16, and the church has given her family food, but her mom's too depressed, so she essentially moves and lives with her uncle, but her uncle, and this is a good thing, he pays for her to go to vocational school. So then from there, she's just kind of on her own doing temp jobs as a secretary, but she's really unhappy with it. And one thing, too, I should say, they really got the period down. Like, it's 1915. All of the technology, like you see in their clothing and everything, the society and how they act, is all within the period, which is probably another. Well, we'll get into that here in a minute. But anyway, she does have one friend, so that's like the highlight right now for her is playing cards with her friend. But she's unhappy as a secretary. Says, I sure didn't want to be a secretary. I wanted to be a police officer. The Los Angeles Police Department had 200 officers. 3 of them were women. So one thing detractors of this would probably say is that it's somewhat of a feminist book. And yeah, I guess it is, but at the same time, it takes place in 1915. So they didn't even have the right to vote yet. So it's going to have to address some of those things if the lead character is a female. But she discovers in the newspaper they're hiring, and it says hiring cast and crew, but it also says they're hiring police. And she notices it says auditions, but she doesn't really consider it. She just knows they're hiring for police. So she waits in line with everybody and goes in. Oh, and actually she meets this guy. He's one of the main characters. Let's see, what was his name? Tim, I think? Frankie. I'm sorry. He kind of drops off in the second issue. He's too much of a pipsqueak for her. Like, you'll see in the second issue. But anyways, he introduces himself, and his name's Frankie. And then Abigail goes in, and so she meets, this is the chief of police. See, this town's actually, as progressive as it is, it's really backwards in a lot of ways. But one thing they do have is they have a female police chief. So they think that's pretty cool. But there's kind of this whole thing where she's like, are you applying to be an actress? And she's like, no, I want to be a police officer. And I'm like, okay. So she goes, and this is really a book for grown-ups too. Like, I think people with a short attention span or children would probably look at a page like this and just be like, whoa, it's 2 women talking? Okay. But it's actually really good dialogue. Like, the guy who wrote this, I was engaged. Like, to me it seemed, and it's a good length comic. To me it seemed short. Like, I just plowed through these. I thought they were really good. But anyways, yeah, she's telling her qualifications. She's like, I can type 35 words a minute, which I guess on a typewriter that's probably pretty good. And the police chief's like, why would that matter? She's like, well, as a police officer, you have to do a lot of paperwork. And she's like, look here, Miss Moore, you actually mean to, you want to be a police officer and not an actress? She's like, yes, ma'am, my father was a police officer. Well, you had me fooled. You have a future as an actress yet. I was almost convinced. So, and the way they talk and everything, too, it's really in the period for the most part. Well, not for the most part. It just is. Like, they do a good job with the dialogue. So anyways, then there's the male chauvinist, and he pops up in issue 2. I didn't really realize that until I reread issue 1. So there is a little of that. But again, it's 1915, so take it or leave it. But anyways, basically he's just ogling her. Same thing when she goes into the office. So I guess it did get a little tiresome. Like, he comments on, you certainly have the gams for it. But, you know, I think that's kind of why I like the second issue, too. It got just into more of what she does, not how she's treated. But anyways, they hire her, you know, and then she comes back the next day, and she goes to wardrobe. Like, it's a movie studio, so it's like its own little town. They have their own police and mayor, but it's a movie studio. So they have a wardrobe, and she says, let's see, what was it about her? Yeah, you're here for your costume. And she says, for my uniform. And she says, oh, sweetie, I'll tell you a little secret. Around here, it's basically the same thing. So there's this whole, like, blurred line between acting and, like, real life. One thing I wanted to bring up, too, the backgrounds are often very simplistic. They're often just kind of a color or, you know, some shapes. It's kind of like graded shadow and stuff. But I didn't have a problem with that. But one thing I bring up about it is I think, and you guys can let me know if you agree on this, if you've read this, or just what you think, if you agree. But I think when the tone or like the feelings of Abigail change, the colors in the panels will sometimes change, particularly when it goes all black like this. There's another example in issue 2. But anyways, she's getting her uniform, and it's all just kind of like greens and, yeah, see, like when she's talking to that guy, it's yellow. And then this scene, it's all green. This is actually really artistic for, having to do it in a simplistic way. So it's green, it's starting to get black, and then she hands her the gun, and it's just like black. She's like, don't forget these. It's a gun and a club. And she says, don't I need some training? And she's like, the club's easy. You hit people with it. And then it's starting to light up again. And then it says, the gun's real, but it's loaded with blanks. And then this here, too, is another thing. This is a movie studio, honey. Not everything is what it seems. So, very interesting. And the whole thing about the gun comes up in the second issue, too. But the art here is pretty cool. I don't know. I've always been interested just in uniforms and like how people dressed in different time periods and stuff, too. So, like in history as well. So, just that kind of stuff is interesting to me. So she comes out, talks to the police chief again. Police chief's running her down a little bit. And it's actually for the better good, though, because she keeps talking back and forth, and the chief says, you put in a year and do a good job, and I'll put in a call to the chief of the L.A.P.D. He's a friend. So she has the potential to get hired on as a real cop. So right now she's like in this weird role where she has to do the role of a police officer, but she's like technically an actress. So I think her job is kind of like security. But again, she's getting hassled by the guys. She gets all mad. And then Frankie pops up. And he's like, hey, I got some ice cream for you. And she's like, I don't know if I can do it here. And he's like, don't let them give you any trouble. And then asks her on a date. And she's like, yeah, I could use a drink after the day I'm having. So this part was kind of crazy, too. This guy asks her directions. And she's like, it's my first day. And he gives the directions and says, oh, they didn't give you a map? And she's like, no. So it must have been an oversight. But yeah, I bet they didn't give her a map on purpose. Or they just didn't think she was competent enough. But like, in reality, your security, you'd be the first person to give a map to. So this is going to be the last thing I show in this issue. There's a couple more pages. I didn't show everything. So at the very end, you see there's this guy up on the water tower. And she's like, oh my. So he is going to jump. He even says, I'm going to jump. So that's the big cliffhanger. She's going to have to rescue him or, do what she can. Although the cover of the second issue, you kind of get an idea of what probably happens. But you can already see the action starting to pick up. It kind of had to set the stage for it, which is why I can let a lot. Like, to me, the way she was treated was just part of the story. It wasn't trying to make a point like all men are bad or anything like that. In fact, her hero, her inspiration for her whole way of life, was her father. So I think that's a positive note to end on. Overall, I really like these first 2 issues. I'll definitely be reviewing issue 2 because they kept talking about it. I liked it, though. These are page turners. I'd highly recommend it. It's well worth $1.50. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't. Hit the bell for notifications. And as always, thank you for watching and being a part of DC Fans United.